Hi guys, Ian Johnson from driversuccess.com. Today we're going to talk about a discussion that always takes place amongst sales and marketing professionals, and that is this discussion that comes down to whether it's better to be a market leader, a market challenger, or a market follower. And what I've done here is I've basically written down each one of these market positions. I've included some benefits, and we're going to go through the pros and cons of each one of them. Okay? However, what I want you to take away from today's video is these three positions are nowhere near as important as being a market expert. Okay? In fact, any market leader was first and foremost a market expert. And they used their business knowledge and their know-how and their expertise on their market to decide whether to lead, challenge, or follow. So it's no longer really about being first or last to market, but more about being a market expert and using that knowledge to decide when to go to market. Okay? So what we're going to do today is we're going to go through the pros and cons of each one of these positions. I'm going to give you an example of how being first was a great success for a company and how being first was an abject failure for another. And I'm going to give you basically 4 areas where you need to focus on in order to become a market expert. Okay? So right off the bat, let's talk about leaders. Now, when you talk about leaders, you're talking about companies with high market credibility. They're seen as the ultimate resource. They've got large market share. They enjoy incumbent positions. They're seen as the innovators, the trendsetters. They've got great engineering and design. They're always turning out great products. Okay? So leaders basically lead the market. They dictate where the market is going. So those are the benefits. The drawbacks of a leader position is that it is difficult to maintain that position for a long period of time. Okay? And you've always got companies trying to usurp your position, trying to take over your market share, and trying to encroach on your business. Okay? And any mistake made by a leader is amplified in the eyes of customers because their immediate reaction is maybe they're not as good as they once were, and maybe a challenger or another company is going to take over. Okay? In terms of being a challenger, these companies are seen as hungry. They're in constant pursuit of a leadership position. They want to take that leadership position away from the market leader. And what I've included here is lower design costs. And what I mean by that is that in a lot of industries, challengers are able to capitalize on the design mistakes of leaders. Okay, so if they sit back and wait to see how the market responds, and if the market doesn't accept this new product offering, challengers are able to basically go in another direction, and it reduces the costs that are involved in designing products because they don't make as many mistakes. They know exactly what the market wants. So they're able to capitalize in terms of leadership errors, okay, in terms of market leader errors. So those are the benefits. The drawbacks are challengers are always compared to market leaders. Okay, any mistake made by a challenger just reinforces the perception for customers that they're not as good as the innovators of the market. Okay, so it's hard to secure incumbent positions. It's hard to become the vendor of choice, and they're constantly chasing the leaders, and they're constantly being compared to the leaders. Now, market followers sit back and let challengers and leaders beat themselves up. Okay, so they're basically smaller, a little bit more nimble. Maybe they're seen as companies that can respond quicker to a changing marketplace. They have lower cost to serve, and in a lot of cases, they can actually have higher gross profit by customer because they're able to basically sell to customers that are largely ignored by challengers and leaders. So it allows them to capitalize on the mistakes of the challengers and the leaders. Okay. However, the problem with followers is that, again, perception is 100% reality, and for customers, followers are seen as companies that aren't risk takers, they're not innovators, and a lot of customers like to align themselves with a market leader. They like to think that they're dealing with the innovator in the market. Okay, so these are the pros and cons of each one of these positions. However, again, none of them are as important as being a market expert. Focus on being a market expert first, and then you decide whether to lead, challenge, or follow. Okay? So I'm going to give you 4 tips on how to become a market expert, or 4 areas where you should work on in order to improve your knowledge of your market. And the first one we're going to talk about is product lifecycle management. Okay? Now, product lifecycle management is a very, very simple product management doctrine. It's something you've probably seen. Okay, I've done a video on this before. So basically, it talks about how every single product has 4 stages or cycles to its life in a given market. Okay, so you have the introduction stage, you have the growth stage, a peak stage, and then a decline stage. All right, so you have this introduction stage, a growth stage, a peak stage, and then a decline stage. Okay, and the reason why product lifecycle management is so important is because you really need to know where your product is in each one of these 4 stages. Okay, that allows you to determine whether or not you should, cut back on production and introduce a new product, or whether you should continue to produce the product in case there's an actual fifth stage, which is called the rebirth stage. Okay, and I did a video about this, and if you want an example of what a rebirth stage might look like, think about vinyl records. You know, long thought dead. CDs came in the 80s. Vinyl records were thought to be going the way of the dodo, and the next thing you know, it started to have a rebirth, and there's now companies that are manufacturing vinyl records, and they've got higher gross profit than they ever had before. So that's the fifth rebirth stage, okay? So you got 1, introduction, 2, growth, 3, peak, and 4, decline. You got to know where your product is in your market and which one of these stages or cycles it's in, okay? The second thing you got to focus on is becoming market forecasting experts. I'm going to try not to run out of room here. And in this case, what you're trying to do is you're trying to say, where is the market going to be in 5, 10, and 15 years, okay? So in this case, what you really need to understand is, where's your market going? Where do you need to be in order to be a part of that growth? What are the threats to your market in terms of competition or competing technologies from outside of your market? So you have to really understand what the market is going to look like in these time frames and where your company is going to be, okay? The third thing you need to focus on, okay, is you need to do gap analysis, okay? Now, a gap analysis is a very simple and straightforward process of defining the business that you have relative to what remains to be pursued, okay? So you got to do it by account, okay? You got to do it by territory, and you got to do it for the whole market. And actually, doing the gap analysis allows you to define your market share. It allows you to determine what your market share is in your market, because you're basically accounting for the business that you have here relative to what remains to be pursued, okay? So basically, you look at a customer, you could possibly sell them 100 units, you're only selling them 60, the gap is 40, you do it by account, it gives you a total for the territory, you combine all the territories, it gives you a definition of the market. You got to do a gap analysis, you got to know what you got to pursue, okay? And the fourth thing you've got to do is you've got to defend incumbent positions. Okay, you got to defend your business. Okay, the more you defend your business, the more you're talking to your customers, the more you know what's going on in your market, the more you know competing bids and what's going on in terms of pricing. And a great way to defend your market position is to run back-end rebates. Okay, I did a video on that as well. This is basically a reward program. Okay, so become product lifecycle management experts, become experts in forecasting market share and in forecasting where the market is going, perform the gap analysis by account, by territory, by market, and defend your position in terms of the business that you have. These are 4 things that you need to do in order to become a market expert. And then to close this up, to give you an idea of why it's not always best to be first, you think about an example of Sony with its Betamax introduction in the 1970s. Sony introduced Betamax, it was an abject failure. JVC sat back and waited and introduced VHS, had 4 times the recording speed and a much better product. In that case, being first did not serve Sony. The market wasn't ready. So instead of worrying about being first or second or third, focus on being a market expert first. Use this knowledge to decide whether to lead, challenge, or follow. So that's it. Market leader, challenger, or follower, or market expert. Ian Johnson, driversuccess.com. Bye-bye.